Welcome into the College Basketball Bracket Science Podcast, your encyclopedia for the college basketball world. We have another live show today. We are talking nonstop bracketology today, only talking bracketology. We're going to talk about the conference previews for the power conferences in a podcast tomorrow. So if you're looking for that, stay tuned for tomorrow. It's not going to be a live show, but we are going to record a video previewing, the Big Ten, SEC, Big East, Big 12, ACC. We even have some more mid-majors that are starting. We got a few games tonight, but we wanted to do a bracketology podcast before that. So all we're going to do today is talk instant bracketology. I know it's Monday and most people are at work. So if anyone in the chat would like to ask some questions, I will surely answer those, but it's just going to be bracketology today. The bubble really starting to separate itself. We're going to talk about all of that. There's really only, if you see the preview on the graphic, there's really only one or two teams that even have a chance of getting in. It's more so that the teams in the last four in could be pushed out based on some bid stealers. So we're going to talk about that. But before we dive into it, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button. Really helps us out. And turn on those post notifications so you know when we go live and can come into the chat and talk some college hoops. And also follow us on social media at Bracket Science with 2 S's. The links are also below in the description. All right, so without further ado, let's dive right into it. Let's pull up the seed list today, March 10th. Your number 1 overall seed is still the Auburn Tigers. Number 2 is Duke. So a little bit of a question. We're going to talk all kinds of stats today. We're going to become just completely nerdy. So we're going to talk about the little bit of a comparison between Auburn and Duke. Auburn has the best resume-based metrics in the country. They're first in wins against bubble. They're first in strength of record, first in KPI. These are all resume-based metrics. Duke is first in every single predictive/quality metric. First in BPI, first in KenPom, first at Torvik, and they are now first in the net. But when you really break things down and you look at who has beaten who, Auburn's just in the better conference. They have 16 quad one wins, which is best in the country. Quad one win, for those who don't know, the best wins that you can have. They're 16-4, 21-4 in the first 2 quadrants. They've only played 6 games outside of the first 2 quadrants. So Auburn, without a doubt, to me, still number 1 right now. I know the predictives say Duke, but Duke is also they're 3rd in strength of record, 7th in wins against bubble, 7th in KPI. So not quite all the way there in the resume-based metrics, but they are right there in terms of the quality-based metrics. We'll have another conversation if Auburn were to lose their first game in the SEC tournament, which would be against either Ole Miss or the winner of Arkansas and South Carolina. So probably Arkansas versus Ole Miss, although South Carolina did just blow out Arkansas earlier. But if Auburn is to win against Ole Miss or say Arkansas, they've pretty much, I believe even right now, they've pretty much locked up that number 1 overall spot. But we'll have another conversation if Duke runs through the ACC tournament and Auburn were to lose first game. So Duke's still your number 2 overall seed, second 1 seed. Houston is your third 1 seed. Now, we talked a lot about Houston earlier in the year because they didn't have a quad 1 win for a while. They've now hit double digits. There's only 6 teams in the country with double-digit quad 1 wins, and Houston is one of those. So Houston is 10-3 in quad 1, 8-1 in quad 2. They have lost 1 game in Big 12 play. We haven't really talked about that much, and it was a home loss by 1 to Texas Tech. Since then, they have been just absolutely lights out. 18-1 or 19-1 now in the Big 12. Just unbelievable stuff for Houston. Kelvin Sampson. So they have pretty much, I'd say just about close to locked up that third number 1 seed. If they were to win just probably, once again, 1 game in the Big 12 tournament, they're probably going to be a number 1 seed. Now it's the fourth 1 seed that is up for grabs. So it's kind of between Florida, Alabama, Tennessee, and Michigan State. Maybe throw St. John's in that conversation. If St. John's were to win the Big East regular season and the postseason and the conference championship, with 30 wins, they would be 30-4 in that scenario. They might need a little bit of help, but they would be at worst probably the first or second 2 seed in that scenario. So I'm kind of throwing in the conversation, but for the sake of this conversation, we'll talk about the other 4. Now, Florida does not have double-digit wins in Quadrant 1. They're 9-4 in Quadrant 1. The best part about them, they don't have a loss outside of Quadrant 1. They have no bad losses. They're 8-0 in Quad 2. 4-0 in quad 3, 6-0 in quad 4. Their strength of record and predictive metrics all are basically 4, except they're 3rd in KPI. They're 4th in strength of record, 4th in wins against bubble, which is another strength of resume metric, 4th in BPI, 4th in KenPom, 4th in Torvik. So pretty much 4 across the board. That is your 4th number 1 seed as of right now. The other ones in the conversation, Alabama. So let's just right now compare Alabama to Florida. Alabama's 2nd in wins against bubble, which basically shows, they have beaten the elite of the elite competition. No surprise there. We know what this team can do. So they're 2nd compared to Florida's 4th. They are 5th in strength of record to Florida being 4. They're 2nd in KPI compared to Florida 3rd. So close there, but their predictives are not as good. Florida's 4th across the board, as mentioned. Alabama is 5, 6, 5. And then when you go to the quadrants, 11-7 in quad 1 compared to Florida's 9-4. So maybe a little bit of an advantage towards Alabama there because you don't really get penalized for losing quad 1 games. They also have not lost a game outside of quadrant 1. But when you combine quadrant 1 and quadrant 2, so your top half of all basketball games that you play, they're 18-7, Alabama is, and Florida's 17-4. So a little bit better of a percentage there. Along with the better predictives, I think it is definitely Florida as your number 1 seed as of right now. And then to me, just slightly behind Alabama is Tennessee. So Tennessee is just basically 1 spot behind Alabama in every single metric, except for KenPom. They are ahead by 1, 5th to 6th. They don't have as many wins in quad 1 or quad 2 or quad 1 plus quad 2 combined, along with quad 1A. So they're not quite all the way there right now, but still in the conversation. When you look at the SEC tournament bracket, these 4 teams that we talked about have all the double buys. So it's probably going to play out a lot like just basically whoever wins that SEC tournament, if it's not Auburn, will probably be your 4th number 1 seed. Tennessee would have to beat Auburn along the way. Alabama and Florida would match up in the semifinals if they don't get upset. So it's probably going to be the winner of that. And then the other team in the conversation is Michigan State. Michigan State been on an absolute tear as of late, kind of in the same boat as St. John's. The Big Ten is without a doubt the 2nd best conference in college basketball right now. If they win the Big Ten regular season by multiple games, may I add, and then win the Big Ten tournament in the 2nd best conference, it's going to be hard for the committee to not have them as that last number 1 seed. They're 2nd in the country right now with quad 1 wins. 12-4, they're 5-1 in quad 2 for a combined 17-5. Their resume metrics, so the reason their resume metrics might not add up with the quad 1 wins, why they have so many, is just because not all quad 1 wins are created equal. You could play the 30th team at their place, or you could play the number 1 ranked net team at their place, and they would still both qualify just as quad 1 games. Now you throw quad 1A in there, it separates it a little bit, but this is why the Michigan State's averages are not as good. So they're 6th in KPI with just strength of record based metric. Once again, 8th in strength of record, 6th in wins against bubble. And then their predictives have an average of 10.3. So that's actually a 3 seed, 8th in KenPom, 12th in Torvik, 11th in BPI. So that's kind of why they're on the 2 line right now. But at some point, if they just win the Big Ten tournament and they won the Big Ten regular season, you just got to look and say they have a ton of quad 1 wins. They did everything you're supposed to. They might need a little bit of help because their best bet to getting on that 1 line is if Florida, Alabama, or Tennessee don't win the SEC tournament. So you're looking at Auburn winning the SEC tournament, and then if all 3 of these teams don't win, Michigan State wins the Big Ten tournament, you might be looking at Michigan State as your 4th number 1 seed. So we kind of already talked about St. John's. If they get to 30-4, winning the Big East regular season and winning the Big East tournament, might be tough to keep them off the 1 line as well. Now they're going to need a lot of help. They're going to need Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee not to win the SEC, along with Michigan State to not win the Big Ten probably. And then we might be talking about St. John's as a 1 seed. St. John's does only have 4 quad 1 wins. They're 10-0 in quad 2, 14-4 in the first 2 quadrants. Haven't lost anything outside the first quadrant, and their combined losses are by 7 points. 4 losses by a combined 7 points. This team's really good. Going to need a lot of help to get to the 1 line. Now let's move on to the 3 seeds. From Briscoe in the chat, will North Carolina really miss out? We'll talk about that here in a second when we get to our bubble portion. I do have North Carolina outside looking in right now. I know they're a huge brand, but just the 1-11 quad 1 record is just, it's not there all the way. That I do really believe that they needed to beat Duke in this game, and if they didn't, since they didn't, they're probably going to have to beat Duke in the ACC tournament. We'll talk about that in a little bit here once we get to the bubble watch a little bit more in depth. So your first 3 seed is Texas Tech. Texas Tech very close to a 2 seed, believe it or not. Texas Tech up at 7th in the net. They're 7th at Ken Palm, 7th at Torvik. Their predictives are better than St. John's is, but Texas Tech strength of record, wins against bubble, is not quite as good as St. John's, along with St. John's being the regular season Big East champion. I definitely lean St. John's in that scenario, but Texas Tech definitely a dangerous 3 seed. Kentucky as your second 3 seed. I know they have a bunch of losses. Don't get me wrong. They're 10-9 in quad 1. Kentucky has the most wins over top 15 teams, tied for the most wins over top 15 teams ever. They're a 3 seed as of right now. They've only played 2 quad 2 games, which is strange. They played 19 quad 1 games. Incredible stuff there. They're 9th in wins against bubble, 13th in strength of record, 8th in KPI. So pretty much a 3 seed across the board. Their predictives are pretty much the same with an average of 13.3, 7-6 in quad 1A, which is good for 3rd in the country. By the way, it was Auburn that had the best quad 1A record in the country, had the most quad 1A wins. It's now Alabama after that win at Auburn. Alabama now has the most quad 1A wins in the entire country. So they're right in that conversation, but Kentucky can beat anyone. Just impressive what they're doing right now. They're solidified right now as the second 3 seed. The next 3 seed, Texas A&M, after that big win against Auburn to get back on track. I don't think Texas A&M's as good, is, talent-wise a 3 seed. Their resume is rock solid. 5-5 in quad 1A, which is the best games you can have. Top half of quad 1, playing against a top 15 team on your home court, just your top half of quad 1. And they're 8-7 in quad 1, 8-2 in quad 2 for a combined record of 16-9, which is just phenomenal. That's fringe 2-3 seed. They're still right there. I agree. They're not that spectacular. I wouldn't take them to go to the Final Four, but they're still right there in that conversation. Then the third 3 seed is up for grabs right now. Right now, I give it to Iowa State, just strictly because of their predictives. They're 8th at Torvik, 10th at Ken Palm, 7th at in the BPI, and 9th in the net. So that's, fringe 2-3 seed. In that scenario, their resume-based metrics are not as good, though they are 12th in strength of record. I think they have the slight edge over these 4 seeds, just aren't quite all the way there either. But whoever makes a run in their conference tournament could definitely end up stealing that last 3 seed. All right, the first 4 seed is Purdue. Purdue still with a rock solid resume as of right now. 17th in strength of record averages, so 11th at KPI, 24th in strength of record at ESPN, which is kind of the outlier here, but 16th in wins against bubble for an average of 17. This is what the committee looks at, those averages. 18th in BPI, 14th at Ken Palm, 13th in Torvik for an average of 15. So yeah, pretty much just solidified on that 4 line as of right now. 7-9 in quad 1, 8-1 in quad 2 for a combined 15-10 in the first 2 quadrants. Another one of those teams with an incredible strength of schedule. So they have only played 6 games outside of the first 2 quadrants, which the committee does look at, and I think they're solidified on that 4 line as of right now. Got a question: what are the chances Wisconsin plays in Milwaukee? I will be the first to admit I'm not great at looking at. This is the reason I do mostly seedless, just because it's a little bit easier to just predict where teams are going to go. If you're a top 4 seed, you have a good chance of playing where you're, where you have the most home court advantage. But obviously, it all depends on the seeds above them. So I would say, they got a pretty good chance as far as I know right now. Again, not the most knowledgeable about that kind of stuff, but more just kind of look at the stats to place these seed lines. But I know top 4 seeds, protected seeds, you get to go where you want to, where you're hoping to play. So I think they have a pretty good shot of being in Milwaukee. I would recommend climbing a little bit from in that 4 range, maybe get to that first 4 seed. So then you can, have the better chance of picking where you want to go. So pretty good shot, but got to win a few games in the Big Ten tournament to for sure to stay off that 5 line and maybe even climb up that 4 seed range. Alrighty, let's keep going with the seed list. The next 4 seed is Maryland. Maryland, one of those teams that doesn't have the most incredible, quadrant-based metrics. They're fine, 7-6 in quad 1, solid, not bad, not the most quad 1 wins in the country, but 6-1 in quad 2, only 2-4 in quad 1A. Combined 13-7 in the first two quadrants, 17.3 average in strength of record resume stuff. So do the math. That's about a 5 seed, but their predictives are a little better at 14 average, which is a 4 seed. And just basically the 4-5 seeds are very close right now. But when you look at the 5 seeds, none of them really deserve to be 4 seeds. And when you look at the 4 seeds, none of them really deserve to be 3 seeds. So it's kind of separating right now. We're starting to get a really good feel of where your team might be placed in the tournament. Next 4 seed is Clemson. Clemson kind of flying under the radar right now. Clemson, the first team we are going to talk about, second team. Texas Tech has a quad 3 loss. Clemson is the second team we're going to talk about with a quad 3 loss. The only thing about Clemson is going to be their strength of schedule, which is why I'm a little worried about them maybe falling to that 5 line. If they are to beat Louisville in the ACC tournament, I fully believe that they'll be solidified on the 4 line. But Clemson, they're in good shape right now. Just kind of, got to take care of business in the ACC, which they've done. Not really much to talk about, just pretty much a 4/5 across the board. Wisconsin as your next 4 seed, as we just mentioned. That loss to Penn State hurt them. They were on the 3 line, even kind of looking at potentially squeezing into that 2 line if St. John's and Texas Tech were to falter a little bit there. That was a tough loss. That really hurt their averages across the board, but they're still in pretty solid shape. 6-7 in quad 1, 9-1 in quad 2 for 15-8 inside the first 2 quadrants. 18 for an average in the resume department, and 16.3 in the predictive department. So pretty much, fringe 4 or 5 seed across the board. Your next 5 seed is Oregon. Oregon have been playing really well as of late. One of the more interesting resumes in the entire country. 11th in wins against bubble, kind of carried by that Players Era Festival championship that they won. 18th in strength of record, 10th in KPI. So their strength of record averages are at 13, which is, pretty much, fringe 3-4 seed in that scenario. But their predictive's not as good for an average of 34. They're 31st at KenPom, 37th at Torvik, 29th in the net, but they're 8-6 in quad 1, 7-2 in quad 2 for 15-8 combined in the first 2 quadrants. That's spectacular for a 5 seed. That's fringe 4-5 seed right there. It's just those predictives holding them back. 5-5 in quad 1A. Those are the best games that you can play. 5-5 in quad 1A. That is really good. There's not a lot of teams that are positive in quad 1A outside of, they might be the only team, in fact, outside of, the top 2 or 3 seeds. So Oregon in great shape as of right now. Next up is Arizona. Arizona been faltering a bit as of late. The predictive still like them. Strength of resume does not really like, or strength of record, does not really like them as much. They're 26th in strength of record. That's not great. 21st in wins against bubble. That's not too spectacular either. That's 5-6 seed range. But they're 11th at Torvik, 16th at KenPom, 10th in BPI, and 13th at the net. And we know that these predictive metrics do contribute a lot to seeding. Right now, they're solidified on the 5 line. Next up is Michigan. I know this might seem a little bit surprising because they've been playing horrible as of late. And I agree. They have been playing horrible. They do not look like a very good basketball team right now, but their strength of record metrics are still really good. They're 23rd in strength of record, 12th in KPI, really good. 18th in wins against bubble for an average of 17.7. Yeah, that's right about on the 5 line there. That's actually fringe 4-5 seed. They have 9 quad 1 wins. I did not realize this until we actually posted on our Instagram a graphic of the most quad 1 wins in the country. They have 9 quad 1 wins, kind of flying under the radar. How many they have? 9-7 in quad 1, 4-2 in quad 2 for 13-9, 4-5 in quad 1A. As we mentioned, like if you're 500, that is awesome. They're just a game below 500. That is really good as well. Michigan in good shape. I know they're going to be a popular pick for a 12 seed to take them down. And the final 5 seed is St. Mary's, the projected automatic qualifier out of the WCC. St. Mary's, just as solid as they come across the board. This St. Mary's team, I've been saying it for weeks, is different than the previous St. Mary's team. This is a big, like power conference looking team, not just, the best team, top 2 team, I guess, in the WCC. This team is really good. They're 15th in KPI, 20th in strength of record, 23rd in wins against bubble, and then an average of 24.7 across the board in the predictive metrics. That with being 4 games above 500 in the first 2 quadrants, six games above 500. Easy math. I'll get there someday. 10-4 in the first two quadrants. Now they're not going to have as many opportunities being in the WCC, but they have just taken care of business. Those wins against Gonzaga carry a ton of weight because Gonzaga is 8th in the net. So those are quad 1A wins every time they beat them. Quad 1A, which they are 2-0 in quad 1A, both against Gonzaga, obviously. So great stuff for St. Mary's. Missouri as the first 6 seed right now. Missouri kind of lost. I think they've lost 3 in a row. I'm pretty sure, maybe 3 or 4. I think it was 3 in a row though. Kind of fading a little bit in the strength of record averages. Still really loved by the predictives, which a lot of predictives, kind of meet the eye test as well. So I kind of agree with this because I think Missouri's a really good basketball team. They're 32nd in strength of record, though 29th in wins against bubble. They're 6-10 in quad 1, which isn't awesome for a 6 seed. 3-0 in quad 2. They're sub 500 in the first 2 quadrants at 9-10, which usually isn't a 6 seed, but they are 4-5 in quad 1A, including with the 4-5 quad 1A, and they're good predictives across the board. 17th at Torvik, 20th at KenPom on the T sheets. They're solidified right now on that 6 line. Next up is Louisville. Louisville with one of the more interesting resumes because they've kind of just taken advantage of the weak ACC. And hey, that's exactly what they should do. I love the story there. It's been awesome. They're 14th in strength of record. 14th in strength of record. How about that? How about Louisville? 19th in wins against bubble. Predictives are a little bit worse than the likes of like Missouri. The reason I have them behind Missouri, and I looked at this for way too long, they could easily be flipped, but Louisville does not have a quad 1A win. So, your best wins that you can get, those top half of quad 1 wins, they don't have one. They're 0-3. Their opportunities were against Tennessee, Duke, and Kentucky, lost all 3 of those. They're 4-5 in quad 1. So sub 500 in quad 1, nothing wrong with that. But, most of their, strength of record stuff is coming from quad 2 where they're 9-1. Just with the lack of quad 1 wins and quad 1A wins, I think they'd be a little bit behind Missouri, even with the, strong strength of record metrics and stuff. So this is where it all takes place. The committee looks at these averages of the strength of record metrics along with the predictive metrics, and then they do put into effect, have you beaten the best teams in the country? And Louisville's 0-3 in quad 1A. Still a terrific team, don't get me wrong, but just solidified on that 6 line. So if you're wondering why they're not up at the 5 line. And I've even seen some people have them at 7 or 8 seeds. I do look at they're just thrown at you, other bracketologies, Lenardi and stuff like that. And I've seen some of them on the 7-8 line. I think that's a little bit harsh, but I do kind of understand where they're coming from. I don't let that influence me at all. I just look at the numbers and based off of that, look at the team sheets that the committee uses. But if you see them on the 7-8 line, that is why, because of that 0-3 quad 1A record, only 4-5 in quad 1. Next up is Ole Miss. Ole Miss just flying under the radar with a tremendous resume right now. They're 12th in wins against bubble. That's fantastic. And if we learned anything from the first committee reveal, it's that they are going to use this win against bubble metric heavily. They're 19th in strength of record. The predictives not as well for an average of 29. They have 7 quad 1 wins though. 7-9 in quad 1, 5-6 in quad 1A. So when you look at Louisville has better strength of record than Ole Miss. Ole Miss has a little bit of the edge in wins against bubble, and they do have the edge in quad 1 wins and quad 1A wins, but their predictives are so much worse than Louisville. So this is where, you just kind of got to average it out and just kind of pick and choose. And this is why you do seed lines for that question in the chat. This is why you do seed lines, because these two teams are they just scream 6 seed. They're both going to be 6 seeds. What region they'll be in, it's tough to say because these resumes are so incredibly different, but both solidified on that 6 line right now. Next up is UCLA. Now UCLA jumped from a 7 seed to a 6 seed without really doing much. They beat USC at home, as they should. USC stinks. More of the reason that they jumped Memphis was not because of anything UCLA did. It was because Memphis's loss to Wichita State switched overnight from a quad 2 to a quad 3 loss, which gave Memphis their 3rd quad 3 loss in the country. And that's going to be the only team we talk about on this entire graphic that has 3 quad 3 losses outside of, the mid majors that are securing bids. So that kind of just ended up flipping these two things. But UCLA, great resume as well. They're 9-7 in quad one, 22 in wins against bubble. They just kind of scream fringe 6-7 seed right now. That's where I expect them to be come selection Sunday in under a week. So Memphis, as we mentioned, that loss turned to a quad 3 loss. One of the more interesting resumes in the country, because after the non-con, they were probably a 4 seed. And then you just have so many roadblocks along the way in the AAC. I get a ton of questions about why is Memphis, so low. And I basically say it's nothing Memphis has done. It is, well, I guess it is something Memphis has done. They didn't get out of the AAC. They're in the AAC. They have roadblocks. They're everyone's Super Bowl, quite frankly. Everyone wants to beat them. And sometimes it happens. They're the hunted in that conference. Their strength of record is great. 16th, 13th at a KPI, 24th in wins against bubble. Predictives are horrible. Their average is 49.7. Just kind of that mid-major bias, it seems, in these predictive metrics, not giving them a lot of slack there. So they left the non-con with a ton of quad 1 and quad 2 wins. They are pretty much in the same spot now. They're 6-1 in quad 1, 5-1 in quad 2. That's 11-2 in the first 2 quadrants, which is awesome. They have 3 quad 3 losses. And as sad as it sounds, that with the predictive metrics, it's just the hurt of being in the AAC. And this also kind of hurts, the 2 seed that has to play Memphis, because I think we all know Memphis is better than a 7 seed. But if you're Michigan State and you win the Big Ten regular season, you win the Big Ten tournament, and you're stuck having to face Memphis, that sucks. That shouldn't happen. That's some of that mid-major stuff that just goes into these numbers. So 3 quad 3 losses, still a really good team. Next up is Illinois. Illinois playing a little bit better as of late. Their predictives are really good. They're 8-9 in quad 1, which is spectacular. Strength of record, not all the way there. 31st in strength of record. So comparing Illinois to Memphis's resume is about as different as you can be, because the predictives like them, but the resume-based metrics don't really like them. They're 25th in wins against bubble, so pretty much just, for an average of 25.7 in those strength of record metrics, just pretty much screams 7 seed to me as of now. 6-2 in quad 2 for a combined 14-11. That's solid. That's really good. I think they'll end up on the 6 or 7 line, quite frankly. Next up is BYU, the hottest team in the country, may I say. Just pretty much, there's not much to really say about BYU. They went from on the bubble to going to be a trendy pick to make the Elite Eight, to make the Final Four, because they're on fire. Richie Saunders become an absolute legend for BYU. Their resume averages 26th in strength of record and 19 in the predictive metrics, which they're 24th at KenPom. They're 26th in net, 24th at BPI. They're 10th at Torvik. Torvik kind of tends to, which is on the team sheet, tends to kind of, have a little bit of recency. It really influences the metric there. So they're 10th at Torvik right now, which is crazy. 5-6 in quad 1, 8-2 in quad 2 for a combined 13-8. Really good, but pretty much just a 7 seed across the board right now. Could end up climbing into the 6 seed range. Next up is Kansas. Yes, I know people do not like Kansas because they've had a little bit of a disappointing year. Still a solid resume, 25th in strength of record. They're 5-10 in quad 1, which isn't awesome. They're 11-11 in the first 2 quadrants. Not bad. That's 500. That kind of just screams 7 seed. Predictive averages of 17.7 with strength of record averages at 25.3. Yeah, pretty much solidified right now as a 7 seed. Not much to talk about there. The first 8 seed is Marquette. We got to talk about Marquette because Marquette went from 3 seed all the way down to 3 seed all the way down to 8 seed, and it's been a little bit of a fall off here. They kind of needed that win against St. John's. They're 12-9 in the first 2 quadrants, but their strength of record not awesome for an average of 27.3. Predictives 23.7. Yeah, that's fringe 7-8 seed as of now. From Elijah Foster in the chat, Lenardi has BYU as a 5 right now. I do not see a world in which BYU is a 5 right now, unless you're just going based on recency bias. I love Joe Lenardi. I respect Joe Lenardi for the he's the godfather of bracketology. But I would recommend if you look on Twitter and stuff to maybe go another route. He does an okay job, but he kind of looks at a lot of, and I would do the same thing if I was at ESPN, because you're paid by ESPN. they look at a lot of the BPI metric and the strength of record metric. So they're 21st in BPI, or excuse me, in strength of record right now, because that's an ESPN based metric, and they're 24th in BPI. That's even still like 6-7 fringe. I'm not really sure how he could get them up to a 5 seed. I'll just I'll compare them to, say, Michigan right now. BYU's 5 and 6 in quad one compared to, let me find Michigan here, 5 and 6 compared to Michigan 9 and 7. 13 and 9 in the first two quadrants for Michigan. BYU's 13 and 8, so maybe a little bit of the edge there, but Michigan has four quad 1A wins. BYU has 2. Michigan has better strength of record metrics across the board there for an average of 17.7. BYU's 26. Yeah, I'm not really sure how he has them as a 5 seed right now. You say, I'm just saying he's quite an outlier on Bracket Matrix. Yeah, he is. I'm glad you look at excuse me, I'm glad you look at Bracket Matrix. That's a great site to use. I think it's kind of known that, I mean, everyone loves Joe Lunardi. He's such a nice guy, but yeah, maybe doesn't look at the team sheet metrics as much. Yeah, if they have a good run in the conference tournament, I think their ceiling right now is to get to pretty much probably a 5 seed. I don't think I can see them ever getting to a 4 seed. I would even say if they were like win the Big 12 tournament, they'll probably be a 5. Could maybe squeeze into a 4, but yeah, I don't know about a 5 seed right now. From Dominic Meadkin, MSU jumped to a 1 seed if SEC causes chaos. 100%. I believe that they can. They're second in the country in quad 1 wins, second best conference in the country if they win the regular season by multiple games and win the Big Ten tournament. How can they not? If you're a Michigan State fan, you're rooting on Florida, Alabama, and Tennessee to not win the SEC tournament. So if you're a Michigan State fan, you're a big-time Auburn fan. You want Auburn to win that tournament, and then you want Michigan State to run the table. And I think that would probably get them as that last number 1 seed. So Michigan State still in the conversation. From Certified Broncos fan, I'm surprised Oklahoma is a 10 seed. Yes, we're going to talk about Oklahoma here, probably in depth here in a second once I get to the 10 seeds. Their resume is so much better than you think. It is I understand their strength of or their conference record is not good. The one thing not on the team sheet is conference record, though. When you compare their metrics or their complete resume, overall body of work to the likes of them behind them, it is better. I thought way too hard about Oklahoma and Baylor, but I ended up being solidified that Oklahoma is better than Baylor. We'll compare them here in a second. Let me answer a few more questions here in the chat. From Reen or Renee, sorry, I can't pronounce names. Definitely glad Texas Tech played BYU earlier. That road win looking nice right now, 100%. That has aged greatly. BYU coming into its own right now. Texas Tech with a great resume. From Cole, Mountain West bids, I'm fully certain that unless there's a bid stealer, that there's only going to be 3 that get an at-large berth. New Mexico, Utah State, and San Diego State. Even San Diego State, I have in the first 4 in right now. It's getting a little bit close for them. But what I will say is the first 4 teams out. All right, you know what? Well, this is a good time to transition back into our bubble watch. Here's what I got for the bubble watch right now. So as you see, the first 4 teams out: North Carolina, UC Irvine, Wake Forest, Dayton. These teams have a very little chance of getting in. I don't see a world where UC Irvine gets in. Wake Forest is going to have to beat North Carolina and Duke to have any chance. So they at least have a tiny chance because their strength of record's okay. North Carolina has to beat Wake Forest and Duke to have any chance with no quad 1 wins. And then Dayton has little to no chance of getting an at-large berth. Nebraska is eliminated because they didn't even make the Big Ten tournament, but based on a 5-way tiebreaker. So they kind of got on the rough end of that, but they have no chance. They're eliminated. Texas will have to make the SEC championship game. And then I fully believe that Boise State and Colorado State are pretty much eliminated. And when there's going to be some bid stealers, I don't think there's really a chance that Boise State gets in. Boise State's 58th in strength of record right now, 55th in wins against bubble. Their predictives are not much better. They only have 6 wins inside the first 2 quadrants. And Colorado State, they're pretty much out. They've been playing great as of late, but did nothing in the non-con, and that is important. I like these teams out. don't have great chances. So I will say that there's 3. There could be 2 if San Diego State were to end up getting pushed out. If Dayton wins the A10 and VCU ends up getting a bid, that would all these bid stealers coming around. If North Carolina wins the ACC, random stuff like that. We saw it last year. So I will say 2 or 3, but if I had to guess 3. From Renee, stay away from anything ESPN. All that takes. Yeah, I love ESPN. They do a great job with coverage, but yeah, I get it. In your opinion, how do you think the ACC teams will do in the tournament? Not great outside of Duke. Duke is a legit national championship contender. Louisville and Clemson, both really good teams, could easily make the Sweet 16, even do great and make the Elite Eight. But I would say that they're probably the ACC is very reliant on Duke. They might only get 3 bids. They really might only get 3 bids. Their only other chance is North Carolina or Wake Forest, and they're going to get to play each other in the ACC tournament. So the winner of that game will get Duke, and they're going to have to beat Duke. So not a lot of hope for the ACC, but maybe Duke gets picked off somewhere, and then another bid stealer can squeeze in there, an SMU or something. Which I don't see that happening. They haven't proven anything that they're going to do that, but it's going to be Duke, and if Duke wins the championship, I would not be any bit surprised. I'm a certified Broncos fan. Who are your bid stealers this year? It's going to be tough. I'm kind of in on Memphis not winning the American. They're the best team. Like, would I be surprised? No, they're by far the best team in the American, but they do kind of play down to their competition. They're they're a lock right now. They're going to be in the tournament, so they're not playing. It just leads in the conversation. How much do teams really care about these the conference tournament championships? Obviously, they care about the regular season. How much do they care about the conference tournament championships? So I'm going to go with North Texas in the American. I think North Texas has a great chance to end up getting in becoming a bid stealer, and then maybe someone out of the Mountain West. Colorado State playing as good as anyone in the Mountain West. They could do it as well, and then you got to watch out for the A10 as well. Dayton and George Mason and stuff like that. From Dominic, respectfully, North Carolina has no reason even being here. Their brand is carrying them. Aren't they 1-11 in quad 1? Yes, they are 1-11 in quad 1. Just when you look at the bubble, though, it's so bad. Like, there's nowhere else for them to go, quite frankly. And believe it or not, their metrics are not that bad. Their predictives are a little bit better. Yeah, I guess you can make the argument that that's the brand. They are still 28th in BPI, which is that ESPN metric. Hot takes, as someone just said. 37th in KenPom, 39th at Torvik. So that's 34.7. The resume averages are 47.7. And so they're 43rd in strength of record, 45th in wins against bubble. The teams behind them, like UC Irvine, is 54th in strength of record, 51st in wins against bubble. So North Carolina does still have the edge. I don't know how, quite frankly. So maybe that's a little bit of power conference bias as well, giving them a little bit better of strength of record and wins against bubble, just being in the ACC. Maybe those teams overrated a little bit. There's just nowhere for them to really go, quite frankly. But yeah, I agree. I don't think there's a chance. The last team in is Ohio State compared to North Carolina. There's a significant gap there, in my opinion. I know Ohio State doesn't have the greatest resume, but Ohio State's 3-7 in quad 1A. North Carolina, 1-9 in quad 1A. They're 1-11 in quad 1. Ohio State is 6-11 in quad 1. So that is a significant gap there. I don't see a world where North Carolina would be in right now, but there is a huge gap from Ohio State to North Carolina. Like, if the thing Xavier and Ohio State should be worried about is not North Carolina jumping them, it's those bid stealers, because there's, like I said, there's really not a great opportunity here. I'm certified Broncos fan. How about Navy winning the Patriot? Yeah, how about that? That would be awesome. They got American tonight, I think. I'd have to check, but yeah, doesn't get more USA than that. Navy versus American in the Patriot final. That's pretty fun there. Love to see Navy go on a little run here. From Anthony, UConn question: how do we avoid on 8 or 9? Got to avoid 1 seeds. All right, let me pull up the Big East bracket here. So they got the 3 seeds, so they will get the winner of Seton Hall and Villanova. Whew, be careful. Villanova can beat just about anyone. If they lose that game to Villanova, they're going to be an 8 or 9 seed. I'm certain of that. If they beat Villanova and then beat Creighton, who they would match up with. I don't think Georgetown or DePaul is going to beat Creighton. They beat Creighton, I think that jumps them to the 7 line, quite frankly. So still in decent shape, but yeah, want to avoid those 1 seeds for sure this year. Those 1 seeds are so top heavy. From Cole, Boise and San Diego State play each other in the first round of the Mountain West tournament, which could be interesting. I did not know that. I don't think I've looked at the Mountain West bracket yet. I'm going to do that show next to preview these conference tournaments. So I haven't even looked at it. I did not know that. That could make it very interesting. If Boise State wins that game, I still like that. I would have to, let me see what San Diego State's 51st in the net right now. So that would actually be a quad 2 game unless San Diego State miraculously somehow jumped someone. But that would be a quad 2 game. So I still don't see a scenario where Boise State can get in. But yeah, you're right. Second round. You just said second round. You're right. That's a first round bye sort of thing. But yeah, that could be very interesting. If San Diego State were to lose that game, that could be tough. From Dominic Mead, North Texas sleeper, 100%. I love that North Texas program. One of the most underrated programs in the entire country. From Oliver Clips, Butler, NIT. Yeah, they don't have a chance of getting into March Madness. I don't even know if I quite frankly don't pay attention to the NIT. That's one of the things I quite frankly don't really care about. I watched Seton Hall versus Indiana State last year, and that was the only game of the NIT I looked into. So I'm not 100% sure, but yeah, there's no chance of getting in the NCAA tournament, unfortunately. That was from Oliver Clips, by the way, from Certified Broncos fan. What is Drake's ceiling? This team can beat anyone. I have them up to a 9 seed right now. I'll pull back up the seed list. I have them as a 9 seed right now. Very similar to Florida Atlantic a couple years ago. Now, with these mid-majors, you always need a little bit of luck to make a deep run to the Final Four, because you're going to have to face Auburn, Duke, Houston, or Florida, most likely. Like when we saw FAU make that deep run, they got to play Fairleigh Dickinson in the second round. I mean, that was a great story, but yeah, I would much rather play Fairleigh Dickinson than Zach Edey in the second round. So they need a little bit of luck, but it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough if they have to play one of these 1 seeds. They're just not as physical. They're tremendous. I wish if Drake's one of the hardest resumes to really go off of, because they really could, like the committee could really give them the benefit of the doubt and give them a 7 seed. Like we saw that with Wofford a couple years ago, where they won a couple games in March Madness. I don't think they're going to get there. I think they're going to be on the 8 or 9 line, maybe even 10 line. They're so hard to judge just because they're in a mid-major conference. So if they ended up on the 7 line and, maybe they can make something happen against a St. John's, just well-coached versus well-coached, 2 teams that really slow down the pace, don't score a ton, not, just kind of out-coach the other teams. So maybe they could do that and make, a Sweet 16, Elite 8 run. But if they play the 1 seeds, it's going to be really tough this year. Just playing these 1 seeds are so good this year. From Dominic, do you have an answer on what happened to Baylor? It was disappointing all year, but to me, the biggest thing was just losing Josh Ojamwana. As soon as they lost him, they have no size. Norchad O'Meara is playing the 5 right now, and he's like 6'7". He's a power forward, and he's an undersized power forward, and now he's thrown into the 5 spot. BJ Edgecombe is very electric. He's not as good as I thought he was going to be in terms of making a winning impact. He's going to be great in the NBA. Don't get me wrong. This Baylor team, yeah, just kind of a disappointing year. They'll rebound next year. Hopefully Rob Wright comes back and can really make some noise. From Team Lock In, UNC in if they win in the second round and course and beat Duke. I think so. I think it's pretty much going to be must win against Wake Forest, obviously, and then must win against Duke. If you beat Duke, you're probably in the field. Depending on bid stealers. So you still have to watch out for those bid stealers. But as of that time, if you beat Duke, probably in the field. If you lose, you're 99%, and I won't go that far, probably 90% outside of the field looking in. They're going to have to win that game. They need a quad 1 win. And that would be a quad 1A win. They need it bad. Certified Broncos fan, I think Omaha will be a 15 seed and beat a 2. Yeah, this team's got some firepower, 100%. So right now I got them as the first 16 seed. This is predicting all the favorites win the conference. So, say, Towson doesn't win and Delaware, who's been on an absolute heater, wins the CAA. Delaware would probably be a 16 seed, boost Omaha up. This could happen in any conference. The the Horizon League, the NEC, anything could happen. From Anthony, I like Omaha. So do I. This team's really fun to watch. I'm glad that the rule's so dumb that St. Thomas can't get in. I honestly thought St. Thomas was going to win that game yesterday, just going into it, but Omaha really showed up. They're playing really good ball. I'm kind of glad that, Omaha didn't leave it to question, have that asterisk on there and just go in and win that game. I thought St. Thomas was the better team coming in, but Omaha just looked fantastic that entire game. From Dominic, who do you think is the lowest seed with the chance to go very far? I've been saying for a while, High Point's my team. High Point can really score the ball. They have not played anyone, and I mean anyone all year. They can really score, so they're a little bit of an unknown. I really like High Point to make maybe win a game if they end up on the 12 line and draw Michigan. That would be an interesting one. If they're on the 13 line, you draw, maybe a Wisconsin or a Purdue. Maybe you can make something happen, but it's going to be tough. I think it's going to be a very chalky March Madness this year because the 1 seeds and 2 seeds are so good. And I think we're just going to continue to see more and more chalk throughout throughout March Madness, the entire rest of college basketball history. I think there's going to be more and more chalk just because of NIL money. These teams are getting better and better. There's more talent. Mid-majors are more of a disadvantage than ever. So I think it's going to be very chalky. But if I had to pick, a 13 seed, I am definitely taking High Point as of now. Arkansas State also in that conversation. They beat Memphis at Memphis earlier this year. Arkansas State's got some talent there, but Arkansas State still has the championship game to play against Troy. So we'll see if they can even get in. From Connor, what is BYU's ceiling seed-wise? I think it's a 5. Maybe could get that last 4 seed if they were to win the Big 12 tournament. I kind of think they're going to end up a 6 or 7, but if they, run the table in the Big 12 tournament, it might be hard to keep them off that 4 line. So I'd say at last a 4 seed, or at complete best a 4 seed, maybe probably 5 seed if they were to win the Big 12 tournament. But obviously it's influenced by what the rest of the teams do. What does Iowa State do? What does, teams like that in that scenario? Dominic just answered that question. Sorry, I went out of order here. From Anthony, what does Duke have to do to overtake Auburn, if anything? I think Auburn's going to be the number 1 overall seed. They should be, quite frankly. Duke's better in their predictive metrics. They're 1 across the board, but Auburn's 1 across the board in resume averages by a lot, like by a ton in each and every single one of these. Duke's average is 5.7 in their resume-based average in their resume-based strength of record averages. They're 3rd in strength of record, 7th in wins against bubble, where Auburn's 1st in both. Auburn's 3rd, 2nd, and 3rd in predictive metrics. So if Auburn were to lose first round, or I guess in their double bye first game against Ole Miss, and Duke beats everyone by 30 along the way to an ACC championship, which I don't think could happen, but you never know. I don't think Duke can overtake them, but they really could in this scenario. We'll have a little bit of a conversation. Auburn's 16-4 in quad 1, Duke's 7-3. That's such a big gap. We'll see. We have another conversation about it later. It should be Auburn. They've been the best team all season and in the metrics that the committee uses. So I still think it's Auburn, but Duke runs the table, blows everyone out. Auburn loses first round, maybe. From Renee, 3 seed or higher winning at all. I agree. I do believe that one of the top 3 seeds, probably top 2 seeds, honestly, in my opinion, could win it all. Yeah, I think it's going to be a little bit chalky. What is it? 64% of 1 seeds win the NCAA tournament. I think we might add to that number again this year. Who is the most vulnerable top 2 seed? From Dominic. St. John's struggles to score the ball at some points, yet they're so well coached. I think I'm going to predict, and this is going to come back to bite me so crazy. I think all the 1 and 2 seeds are going to make the Sweet 16 this year. Maybe if there's a 1 seed I could see getting picked off, it could be Houston, just in case they were to stall offensively. Like, teams are not going to beat Alabama. They just play at a style that their floor is so high. Tennessee just guards the crap out of it. They're going to frustrate everyone. A little hesitant about them relying on Chaz Lanier so much. I don't see him getting beat. St. John's and Houston can struggle to score the ball at some point. So if I had to pick, I'd probably pick one of those two, but I don't think I see it happening this year. Certified Broncos fan, I feel like UC San Diego goes on a Loyola Chicago run. If the computers are right and the computers love UC San Diego, they're 39th at KenPom. This would be the team to probably pick as an 11 or 12 seed to make a Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four run. UC San Diego. Hopefully they're getting in the tournament. Hopefully they don't lose. Maybe they lose to UC Irvine in the Big West Finals and still end up as an at-large team. So that could be another bid stealer in that scenario. Certified Broncos fan, I think Houston is the weakest 1 seed. I think Houston gets upset early. Their non-conference really scared me. I had a bunch of futures, quite frankly, on Houston at the beginning of the year. They were my number 1 team going into the year. Thought they were going to be the best team. Non-conference scared me a little bit. It took a while to pick up their first quad 1 win, and then they've kind of gone on just an absolute tear as of late. I agree. Every once in a while I watch them and they just look a little bit, I mean, they're not small, but they look small to me at some points. They don't look like, LJ Cryer small. Emmanuel Sharp isn't like the most physically compelling guy ever. Milo Suzanne is pretty athletic, 6'4" point guard. But to me, they just look like if they were to go up against a group of grown men, not that Houston's not grown men. They're awesome. Don't get me wrong. They're awesome. But if they were to go up against a team that's bigger than them, who look like NBA athletes, like Duke or Auburn, I'm a little bit scared. Even Florida in that conversation. They lost to Alabama in the Players Era Festival earlier this year in overtime, so they can compete with Alabama. They've been dominant in the Big 12. I love Kelvin Sampson. I love Nate Oates, but we will see. What are your favorite hypothetical matchups right now? I usually don't end up doing a bunch of matchups just because they change so quickly. And you got to go through all the bracket processes of where, teams can go. Like BYU is in a weird scenario where they can't play on Sundays. My favorite hypothetical matchup would probably be give me Liberty against Michigan in a 12-5 game. Michigan is huge. Liberty is not huge at all, but Liberty is so guard heavy and can really score the ball. Michigan's been pretty fraudulent as of late. Hypothetical matchups. I'm trying to do the math here. Drake versus Gonzaga would be awesome in an 8-9 game, or even Drake versus UConn. If Drake played UConn, I think everyone in America other than UConn fans would be so heavy on Drake. Now, I love Dan Hurley, don't get me wrong, but people love the Ben McCollum Drake story. That's my favorite story in college basketball. He brought a team up from Division II and has won 30 games. First team to get to 30 wins. They're 30-3. That's an awesome story. So I'd say those two, maybe Drake, Gonzaga, Michigan versus Liberty. That would be fun. From Connor, are you going to go over a complete tournament bracket in the stream? I did go over all the seed lines I've been through 1 through 7 already. If you want to rewind a little bit, I'm not doing a complete bracket as of now, just because things are changing so much. So, with all the committee rules, it's so hard to change it. So I'm just doing seed lines for the rest of the year. I did have some brackets earlier in the year just to see some potential matchups, but I'm going to be just doing seed lines with how quick things are changing. But I will go through the rest of the seeds here once these questions are done. From Christian, I feel like St. Mary's should be lower. They're fringe 5-6 seed right now, but to me, their resume is just so much better than the first 6 seed of Missouri. So if you go over them, so St. Mary's 19th in the net, Missouri's 21st in the net. St. Mary's is 20th in strength of record. Missouri's 32nd. Missouri's 29th in wins against bubble. St. Mary's is 23rd. Missouri's a little bit better in the predictives with an average of 22.3 compared to St. Mary's 24.7 in predictives. St. Mary's being in a weaker conference, maybe you can make, I see the argument where maybe their resume's getting carried by Gonzaga being 8th in the net and they beat them twice. So I understand where you're coming from. 4-2 in quad 1, 6-2 in quad 2 for a combined 10-4, 6 games above quad, above 500 in the first 2 quadrants. That's just too good for me, quite frankly, to move them down from a 5 to a 6. I could see, Missouri or Louisville could jump them, but I think St. Mary's, they're solid. They're solid. I see them as a 5-6 seed. If you have them as 6 seed, wouldn't hate it whatsoever. From Dominic, Who do you think wins the Big Ten tournament? I think a loss for MSU would benefit them. I agree on the losing thing, weirdly, because I'll just use Auburn as the example. Auburn loses and it just kicks you into gear. Purdue lost in the semifinals of the Big Ten tournament last year, and you saw what it did to them. It's like, oh, it's a wake-up call. Someone can beat you on any given night. And I think you could say the same for Michigan State. They've been as hot as you can be. Use that as a motivation factor that we've learned, Tom Izzo uses, Dan Hurley obviously uses. If I had to pick a team to win the Big Ten, I don't think I can go against Michigan State right now. They are by far the hottest team in the Big Ten. But if Michigan State were to get beat, I think the next best team in the Big Ten is Maryland. I think Maryland is, kind of solidified itself as a top dog and can beat anyone in the country with Derek Queen, Gillespie, Rodney Rice been making shots. That team is really good. Dominic Meade, that Indiana loss, a great example. 100%. Yeah, great point. Great point. They you lose at home to Indiana, and then you turn around. You're like, wow, anyone can come in here and beat us, and now you're beating everyone that's in Quad One. So good stuff there. All right, let's move back to the bracket real quick. We left off on the 8 seed. So next 8 seed is Gonzaga. Gonzaga, terrific predictive metrics, 9 across the board, but eighth in the net. So you're looking at a 3 seed in that scenario, but their strength of record is 46, 43rd in wins against bubble. Predictives are keeping them there. They're still 8-8 in the first 2 quadrants. So they are a lock right now to get into the tournament. But it's going to be tough for a 1 seed to have to face Gonzaga in that scenario. Same goes for UConn as our next 8 seed. We talked about them a little bit earlier from a question. They have a chance to probably jump up to the 7 line, but UConn, another one of those teams that they got a quad 3 loss. They're 12-8 in the first 2 quadrants, still pretty solid. They're closer to a 7 seed than they are a 9 seed right now. Mississippi State, one of those teams that we're not talking about enough as the fall off, as negative as that sounds. They went 8-10 in the SEC. Now I know the SEC is the best conference statistically of all time. They went 8-10 in the SEC. That's not great. They were up to like a 3 seed at one point in the season. Their non-conference was spectacular, and it's just kind of what Mississippi State is. A 6, 7, 8 seed every year that, might win a game in March, might not. Kind of just a disappointing year because I really see the talent with this team. I hate to call out just one player. I did not like the acquisition of RJ Melendez. Just never really meets my eye test every time I watch him. Love Josh Hubbard, love the physicality of that team, but that kind of, I don't know. Sometimes there's just too many guys who need the ball in his hands in that scenario. First 9 seed, let's move on, is Creighton. Creighton just kind of, doing its own business. I fully expect them to be in an 8-9 game no matter what. They are the 2 seed in the Big East tournament. So, they've done well for themselves. Kind of have been off the radar a little bit as of late. They're probably going to have to play UConn in the second round, UConn or Villanova. Villanova, another one of those teams, going back to the bid steward questions. I could really see Villanova becoming a bid steward. This team can beat anyone. Kyle Neptune, this is going to be, if he loses, this is going to be his last game. I'm pretty certain of that. So maybe they're got some motivation to play for their guy and try and make a run to the NCAA tournament. Next up, New Mexico, which we already talked about a little bit. New Mexico in a good spot here. Beautiful metrics across the board. Quite frankly, just, an average of 30 in strength of record, 42nd in predictives. They're 11-4 in the first 2 quadrants, which is very, very good. A lot of that coming from quad 2, which is 8-1, but they do have 2 quad 3 losses, which is what's keeping them on a 9 seed. Could end up an 8 seed, but the committee doesn't. If we learned anything from last year's committee, they don't like the Mountain West beating up on itself and considering those quad 1 wins and quad 2 wins. So we'll see what they do because their non-conference wasn't awesome. It wasn't bad. It wasn't awesome. So that's kind of why I got them as a 9 seed right now. Drake, we already talked about deeply. 30-3, best story in college basketball, in my opinion. I know Rick Pitino has a great story going on at St. John's. Drake, to bring guys up from Division II and go and to win 30 games, it's just awesome. Next 9 seed is Georgia. Georgia is going to be in the tournament. They have really turned their season around as of late. They're 30th in the net, 34th in strength of record, 31st in wins against bubble. That's really good. That screams pretty much 9 seed and 32.7 average across predictive metrics. You want to be, anything better than usually 41-45, you're going to be in the tournament most likely. 9-11 in the first two quadrants, no losses outside the first two quadrants. Good resume. I don't really see much of a ceiling with this team. I think they could win one game, but I wouldn't count on it, especially against these pretty good 8 seeds. First 10 seed Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt kind of in that strange predictives don't like them, but their resume does. Strength of record 38th, wins against 34th. Yeah, that's pretty much about a 10 seed. Predictives average out at 46.7, which isn't great. They haven't done anything wrong. 9-11 in the first two quadrants with 0 losses outside the first two quadrants. Team's really good. I'm kind of bought in on Mark Byington being one of the better coaches in the SEC within the next couple of years. Utah State is the next 10 seed. Started off really hot, have really started to struggle as of late. People starting to figure out their zone, but they're solidified in the tournament. West Virginia also with their win the other day, they're solidified in the tournament as of right now. Now Oklahoma, we had this question of Oklahoma being a 10 seed and Baylor as the first 11 seed. So let's compare Oklahoma to Baylor in this scenario. Now they're two very different resumes, I guess. Baylor's averages across the record resumes are 42.7. So yeah, as we said, you want to be better than 41-45 to, probably be a lock. Oklahoma's is 40, so a little bit better. They're 35th in wins against bubble. They're 44.3. Oklahoma is in predictive averages. So usually what we see when you go to the 10, 11, 12 seeds, when we talk about, teams getting buys, teams, a lot of seeding is influenced by the predictives. But when it's in this scenario, it's a lot of resume based metrics. Who deserves that last buy? Who has done the most to, deserve that last 10 seed, to stay out of when you get into the last 4 buys, first 4 in. And then when you move on to the quadrants, Baylor is 1-10 in quad 1A. So they've played a tough schedule. Oklahoma is 3-9. That's a significant difference in quad 1 in general. Baylor's 5-11. Oklahoma is 6-10. 4-1 in quad 2 is Oklahoma for a combined 10-11 in the first 2 quadrants. Baylor is 10-12 in the first 2 quadrants. So all of these kind of lean Oklahoma in that scenario. Both teams are 2-1 in quad 3, so pretty much equal there. Predictives do favor Baylor. Resume favors Oklahoma. So in this scenario, it's close, but I do lean Oklahoma as the last 10 seed over Baylor. And then Arkansas is your last team. So Arkansas, Baylor, and Oklahoma are about as close as they come, quite frankly. Arkansas, so let's compare just Arkansas to Oklahoma. Oklahoma, as we mentioned, 40 average of strength of record metrics. Arkansas is 41, so a little bit on Oklahoma's side. Oklahoma's 44.3 once again in predictive averages. Arkansas's 42.7, so barely leans Arkansas. But then when you move on, you keep going down the line, you go to the quadrant. 1-7 in quad 1A is Arkansas compared to Oklahoma. 3-9, advantage Oklahoma. Arkansas 6-9 in quad 1 compared to Oklahoma 6-10. So maybe you lean Arkansas there. See, it's very, very close. But then in quad 2 is where it makes the difference to me. Arkansas's 2-3, Oklahoma's 4-1 for a combined 10-11 in the first 2 quadrants. Arkansas is 8-12. That's a little bit too much of a difference to make up. Arkansas does not have a quad 3 loss, which Oklahoma does. But that quad 1 plus quad 2 is a little bit too much of a difference for me to make up with similar metrics across the board, which is why I give Oklahoma the edge over Arkansas. So before we dive into the first 4 mid-majors, let's answer a few questions from Christian. Do you think Kansas is going to be locked up in 7 or could go up? They could definitely go up. I think they could end up as a 6 seed depending on what they do in the Big 12 tournament. Let me pull up the Big 12 tournament here real quick. Who do they get? I can't even. I don't have the Big 12. I apologize. I don't remember who they would match up against. If you know, let me know. But yeah, they're probably going to have to get to the semifinals to get to a 6, I would think at best. But yeah, I don't think I see them dropping to an 8. They could, I guess, maybe drop to the first 8, but I kind of think they're just going to end up on that 7 line. Certified Broncos fan, I would not trust Mountain West teams to win a game. Yeah, San Diego State did make the championship. This year, I'm a little bit lower on the Mountain West than most years. Last year, I was one of the ones that took New Mexico to beat Boise State, or excuse me, to beat Clemson, and then Clemson ends up making the Elite Eight. Utah State won a game last year. I'm a little bit lower on it this year. I don't see quite the ceilings. New Mexico has one of the best point guards in the country with Donovan Dent. So if I had to choose anyone, I'd probably pick them. San Diego State's roster just, quite frankly, isn't awesome. Great coach. Brian Dutcher's awesome. They just don't have the highest ceiling. They did beat Houston earlier in the year, but that was when Houston was going through some struggles. San Diego State, I don't see San Diego State or Utah State making a deep run. New Mexico, maybe. Colorado State, a team to watch out for. They're playing incredible basketball right now. Would not be surprised if they win the Mountain West and win a couple games. They're playing really good basketball as of now. From Dominic, a second-round matchup of Michigan State versus AJ Hoggard and Vanderbilt would be hilarious and very entertaining. That would be awesome. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun if Vanderbilt were to beat the 7 seed and get Michigan State. That would be a lot of fun. Wouldn't be surprised if the committee, set that up a little bit to get something going there. That would be a great game. From Sam Wishna, do you think VCU will get in if they don't win the A10 tournament? And do you think they can make a run? I'll answer the second question first. I definitely think VCU can make a run. This team's really, really good. It's going to be tight if they don't win. If they make the championship game and lose to who would they play? They were to make the championship game and lose to George Mason or Dayton in the championship game, it would probably be about as close to 50-50 as I can say. I don't know. It depends on bid stealers. They're really good, and I think let's pull up the numbers here because this is a great question. Let's compare them to like Ohio State as the last team in right now. Ohio State has a resume average of, or a strength of record average of 49. VCU is 48.3, so that's about as close as it gets. Predictives, Ohio State 36.3, VCU 30. So they do have a little bit of the edge in that scenario. Ohio State 6-11 in quad 1, VCU only 2-1. You're not going to get a lot. 5-4 in quad 2. So they're 7-5 combined in the first two quadrants compared to Ohio State 9-14. Yeah, I would have VCU in over Ohio State right now. So it's just, that puts you as the last team in. And right now, I think if I were to put it, I would say Ohio State has probably less than a 50% chance to get in as of now, just because there's going to be bid stealers. I'd say you're probably going to get 2 bid stealers, I would guess. I mean, those are as hard to predict as you can imagine. So they would probably be, Ohio State's got some work to do to get in, but VCU would probably be slid in between Indiana and Xavier as of now. So man, it all depends on those bid stealers, and you're already qualifying one bid stealer with, Dayton or George Mason probably to jump them. So that puts you back to the second to last team in. Man, it would be really close. I'd say 50-50. I hope they get in. I've watched this team play a lot this year. This team is good. They are legit. They are really good. I'd say it's about 50-50 right now. From Connor, would you say a 5 or 6 seed has a better chance of making it to Elite 8 matchup wise? I'm not sure. So you would play the 3 or 4 seeds compared to the 1 or 2 seeds playing the 7 or 8 seeds. I think that means. I'm not sure. I don't think so. Matchup wise, so like the 5s would play the 4s. I think the 4s are much better than the 5s this year, quite frankly. Michigan has obviously been struggling, as has Arizona. Oregon, it's one of those teams I don't really know what to do with. I like St. Mary's this year. I'm kind of in on St. Mary's. So maybe if they match up with, like if St. Mary's matches up with Wisconsin or Purdue, I'll probably take St. Mary's in that scenario. 6 seeds against the 3 seeds, I don't think, yeah, maybe, I see it. Ole Miss, Louisville, Missouri, UCLA against the 3 seeds. Texas Tech and Kentucky are going to be hard to beat, but A&M and Iowa State definitely have proven a little bit vulnerable, especially as of late. So, yeah, that's I guess that is definitely a potential thing there. I would still much rather be just the higher seed and not, risk it. Go to where you can be closer to home if possible in those top 4 protected seeds. From Dominic, do you see any power conference bid stealers? I'm sure we'll get one. We seem to get one every single year. Let me pull up the tournament schedules here. So I mean, in the ACC, your only potential bid stealers that I could even see happening would probably be North Carolina or Wake Forest, and I don't think I see that happening. By the way, Pitt, the 13 seed in the ACC tournament, what an incredible fall off. Outside of Pitt, like those first teams, there's no way. But I guess maybe I'd have said that about NC State last year. The Big 12, I also don't think I see any. The top 8, so the teams that receive buys are the teams in the tournament right now, and behind them, not really close to being an at-large team. So, like, I don't see UCF beating these teams on neutral floors. I just don't see it happening. I'd say no there. Nick Martinelli legacy run would go crazy. Yeah, I hope if Northwestern were to get in and Chris Collins were to get them dancing again, that would be awesome, especially losing Brooks Barnheiser. If Martinelli can lead them there, that would be just absolutely terrific. They get Minnesota first round. Watch out for that one. That's going to be a fun game. Northwestern versus Minnesota. Wow, that's a lot of fun. Then you get to play Wisconsin, who just lost at home to Penn State. And UCLA, has proven a little bit vulnerable on the East Coast. So, maybe the winner of that Northwestern Minnesota game can make a little bit of run. Iowa also been playing decent ball, and maybe even Rutgers in the Big Ten. To me, the Big Ten is probably the one that's most up for grabs right now. It's been the closest conference all year. If I had to, take a flyer on a bid stealer, and I did, I already bet it actually, it would be Villanova to win the Big East. I said on the last podcast, if you have 2 quarters, 50 cents to throw on Villanova to win the national championship, as crazy and stupid as that might sound, it would pay like $500 right now because they're not projected in the field. But this team can really beat anyone. So if they go on an NC State-like run and win the Big East, which the Big East is pretty vulnerable to me. They're great. UConn, not as awesome as they've been. Xavier's your 4 seed. Marquette has really been struggling. If Xavier or Marquette can knock off St. John's, maybe Villanova can make a little bit of a run there. And, if they make the Big East tournament, or if they make the NCAA tournament, they will have a chance to definitely win a game there. So maybe there, but the SEC, no one's going to run through that gauntlet and beat those top teams. It's just too many good teams to have a bid stealer, in my opinion. So probably the Big East or the Big Ten is your most likely scenario. Dominic, I feel bad for them. They always have injuries. Yeah, I agree. I think Chris Collins, one of the most underrated coaches in the country. I like what he does at Northwestern. Beat FAU last year, first round win. Boo Booey, loved it there. Great program. Hopefully they don't get the injury bug next year as well. Alrighty, so let's move on to let's switch back to the bracket, to the bubble watch graphic real quick. So as we mentioned, San Diego State, Indiana, Xavier, and Ohio State as our first 4 right now. First 4 out, we kind of talked about it earlier. So if you want to listen to that, go ahead and look back. They don't have much of a chance of really squeezing in. Maybe North Carolina or Wake Forest can beat Duke and squeeze in, but Nebraska eliminated. Boise State and Colorado State pretty much as close to eliminated as you can be. And Texas will need to make the SEC championship game. Probably not going to happen. UC Irvine just isn't going to have any opportunities, as is Dayton. So you're probably looking at Xavier and Ohio State with a chance to just drop down because of bid stealers, not because North Carolina or UC Irvine or Wake Forest is going to jump them. In terms of Xavier, let's talk about Xavier real quick. Xavier's the 4 seed in the Big East. They are ahead of Marquette. It looked like Marquette was going to win the Big East for most of the season. They're now the 5 seed. So they will match up in the quarterfinals, Xavier and Marquette. I think if Xavier wins that game, that's a quad 1 game. That'd be close. It'd be close with the bid stealers. They might jump Indiana in that scenario. Xavier only has 1 quad 1 win. If they were to win this, pick up that second quad 1 win, that would be huge. It's probably a win and you're in for now scenario. If you win that game and then you beat St. John's, you're going to be in the tournament. If you win that game and lose to St. John's, probably about as close to 50-50 as you can get. But you got to beat Marquette. If you don't beat Marquette, you're probably dropping behind Ohio State, and there's a good chance you're going to be left out of the tournament. Probably a pretty much of a must-win game there against Marquette. And then let's just the only other one we'll talk about is Indiana. Indiana gets Oregon in the first round of I guess technically the second round of the Big Ten tournament. If you win that game, you're probably in, I would think. I think that would jump you over San Diego State. So if Xavier wins against Marquette. Indiana loses. Those two flip, I would guess. Indiana wins and Xavier wins. Those two might jump San Diego State, depending on what they do against Boise State. So there is a lot to play for these first four teams. These are the teams I would look out for. I mean, obviously watch the North Carolina versus Wake Forest game. That's going to be, North Carolina is going to have to get by Pitt or Notre Dame first. I don't think they won't get by them, but then North Carolina, Wake Forest will have some implications just because they're going to have to beat Duke. But we'll see. It's those first four that you should be looking out for. Let's go back to the graphic and move on to, as the last 11 seed is VCU out of the A10, the projected automatic qualifier. As mentioned, I would throw them in the conversation with Indiana and Xavier right now, if not. First 12 seed is UC San Diego, the loved by KenPom, UC San Diego, and then Xavier matching up with Ohio State in Dayton. Xavier is in Cincinnati. Ohio State is in Columbus, and the middle of those two cities is Dayton. How fun would that be if we get a Xavier and an Ohio State matchup? Next 12 seed is McNeese. Not real high on this McNeese team this year, quite frankly. I still think they'll be a 12 seed because they got good predictives. I don't think they're as good as they were last year. I don't know if I really see it with McNeese winning a game this year, but they've got some athletes. 12 seed Liberty out of Conference USA. They do still have to play some games to obviously secure that berth, but they're definitely the best team in Conference USA. Can really shoot the ball. If they were to match up with Michigan, as mentioned, that would be a very fun matchup. First 13 seed is Yale out of the Ivy League. Yale could jump to a 12 line, as could High Point, the already winner out of their respective conference, whatever conference, the Big South. If they were to, if Liberty and McNeese don't win their conference, which I don't see a world where McNeese doesn't win their conference, they could jump and end up on that 12 line. Akron as the next 13 seed out of the MAC. Could be Akron, could be Kent State, could be, Miami. I don't think Miami's going to win. OU, Ohio University, also in that conversation. They're a little bit beat up, so I think it's going to be Akron or Kent State, but Akron has been the best team all year. Arkansas State out of the Sun Belt. They have the championship game against Troy, so either Arkansas State or Troy. Top four teams in the Sun Belt all were tied in the conference standings, by the way. So fun stuff in the Sun Belt. First 14 seed Lipscomb, who secured a berth yesterday with a win over North Alabama. Fun team. Can shoot the ball. We'll see about them. Furman as the automatic qualifier out of the SoCon. Furman will play Wofford tonight. Furman, they got some magic in their veins over at Furman. They beat Virginia, obviously, a couple years ago. Just upset one seed Chattanooga yesterday, so Furman could get there. Northern Colorado, I believe I had a question about Northern Colorado. This is just now reminding me of it. Northern Colorado, could they jump up to a 13 seed? Yeah, maybe. If Wofford beats Furman, Northern Colorado would definitely be ahead of them. And then, Troy beats Arkansas State and Ohio wins the MAC. Yeah, there's a scenario. I think be either the first 14 or the last 13, quite frankly. But Northern Colorado, a good team, kind of a sneaky little 14 seed there. 14 seeded Utah Valley out of the WAC. Could be Utah Valley, could be Grand Canyon. Hopefully we see those two teams match up in the championship game. Towson out of the CAA. Could it be Delaware? Delaware, the 12 seed in the CAA, is dominating. They just beat William and Mary by 22. They beat them by 22 the other day. 12 seed versus 4 seed in the CAA tournament. How about that? Could be Delaware, could be Towson. UNC Wilmington, to me, is the best team, so it might be UNC Wilmington. They would be a sneaky little 14, maybe 13 seed. Charleston also escaped yesterday, so they have a chance. Bryant out of the America East. Bryant, Vermont, could be one of those. Robert Morris out of the Horizon could end up with Cleveland State. I believe the semifinals start tonight. I'll have to double check. And then Central Connecticut State escaped disaster the other day. Central Connecticut State is by far the best team in the Northeast Conference. They almost lost to Fairleigh Dickinson, almost literally choked that game away against Fairleigh Dickinson. This is not a good Fairleigh Dickinson team. They're not the team that they were a couple years ago, although they were a playing game, I guess. But Central Connecticut State is worlds better than every team in the NEC. Hopefully they end up in the tournament. And then Omaha as your first 16 seed could definitely jump up to a 15. Norfolk State out of the MEAC. Hopefully we end up with them. And then when you look at the playing games, you got Quinnipiac taking on Southern, and then you have SIUE, who also clinched a berth, taking on American either going to be American or it could be Navy out of the Patriot League. That championship game is today, I believe. That is the entire bracket in an hour and 20 minutes. Those are your entire seed lines as of now. I'll hold the floor open just for a couple seconds if anyone has any more questions. They're wondering on this graphic, on the seedless graphic, or this bubble watch graphic. So any more questions, let me know what you think. Potential ceiling, floor of seed lines and stuff like that. I'll take this time to let you know we are going to have another podcast that we record. We got to record it tonight. So I'm not going to talk too much about tonight's games. There's 2 more bids being punched. For those, go check out our Instagram, Twitter, TikTok at Bracket Science with 2 S's. So we're going to record the podcast for this upcoming week, which will release tomorrow morning, where we'll talk about all the power conference tournaments that are coming up. A little bit of a breakdown of all of them, some potential bid stealers. We're not going to talk bracketology because we just spent an hour and 20 minutes talking bracketology, but we'll talk about, some of the results, what it means, some teams that are, Delaware, blazing hot right now. Could they actually win a game? We'll talk about all of that. That'll be in our show that releases tomorrow morning. So stay tuned for that. And if there's no more questions, I think that's going to do it. Before you leave, be sure to hit that subscribe button, notifications. Helps us out. Really appreciate it. Been growing a lot lately. Appreciate everyone for helping out in that scenario, and follow us on those social medias, of course, down below right there. And that's going to do it for the show today. Everyone have a great rest of their week. Stay tuned to our show for tomorrow morning. Take care. Enjoy basketball.